Doctor Who returned to our screens in 2005, and now, 20 years later, I'm here to mark the occasion by ranking all the villains from the first season of New Who. Spoiler warning for the first season of Doctor Who, obviously. The Gelth were turned into gas during the Time War, and they appear in 1869 Cardiff in a mortuary. There they reanimate corpses by the gases found in the decomposing humans. The Gelth are used well in that they really brought up the guilt the Doctor feels about the Time War. But Doctor Who villains are at their best when there's a costume, and the Gelth are just CGI creatures. Reanimating corpses with gas is a fun idea though, and the corpse makeup is great, so it's not that they are exactly bad or anything like that. But I do think that this episode is probably the weakest in the season, and it's not like the Gelth are really pushing it over the line either. But at least it did give us this great line from the Doctor.
You know I'm gonna die in a dungeon in Cardiff.
Father's Day might be one of the best episodes in the season, if not the best, but the Reapers are not the reason why. They have a cool design and are imposing as they are basically unkillable, but they are just CGI creatures, so that's always minus points. But ultimately, the Reapers are not really that villainous, they are kinda just doing their job, benefiting from a situation that they didn't create. So maybe the 10th best villain in the season is actually the car that drives over Pete Tyler? The whole episode starts with Rose wanting to visit her father as he died when she was just a baby. But once Rose suddenly decides to stop her father from being run over, a whole new pocket dimension timeline thingy is created, which causes the Reapers to appear. Then, for the whole episode, the car keeps on driving around as if waiting for Pete to be run over. But actually, the car driving over Pete was an accident. So is that really a villain either? Wait a second. Okay, yeah. Sorry for this confusion. Sorry. The real 10th best villain of the season is Rose. I mean, she made this whole problem happen by saving her father. Of course her actions were understandable, she was working from an emotional standpoint, but nonetheless she acted selfishly and almost caused a lot of people to die, even the Doctor. The Sacrifice and the Editor are kind of an interesting pairing. The Sacrifice is just a big CGI blob screaming on the ceiling of Satellite 5, so that's not so interesting on its own. But the Editor, the main lackey of the Sacrifice, is played by Simon Pegg, so that does bump it up quite a bit. Or I guess they just kind of cancel each other out. The Sacrifice also has a wonderfully ridiculous name, something which the head writer Russell T Davies clearly liked doing, especially in this first season. So, let's try it. The Mighty Sacrifice of the Oxendoran... The Mighty Sacrifice of the Holy The Mighty Sacrifice of the Holy Hadrojassic Maxa Rodenfold. The Mighty Sacrifice of the Mighty Sacrifice of the Holy Maxa Traffic Roden. The Mighty Sacrifice of the Holy Hadrojassic Maxa Rodenfold. I got it. Well, at least I'm not the only one who had problems with this name.
The Mighty Jagrafess of the Holy Maxa... On set, it was getting harder and harder. The Mighty Jagrafess of the Holy Maxon... Sorry.
Anyway, the whole plot of the Sacrifice manipulating humanity through the news on Satellite 5 is a fairly fun concept, and used quite well. And as far as screaming CGI blobs in Season 1 go, Sacrifice is probably the best one. The triple threat of Android, Trine E and Susanna in the penultimate episode of the season was certainly not predictable, as the Doctor, Rose and Jack are all transported into different future versions of 10 current TV shows. Neither the characters or the audience really knows what to expect. Android is the real star here, being a surprisingly menacing presence in The Weakest Link. And well, there's just something so fitting about the way she kills the losing contestants.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
All three androids work extremely well on screen, since they are just great pieces of costume work, proving once again that Doctor Who is at its best when it's just people in costumes. The Daleks. One of the most iconic parts of Doctor Who as well as just sci-fi in general. They were behind the deadly game shows, and in the season finale they came in with a full fleet. Led by the Dalek Emperor, a massive creation with a huge, slimy Dalek creature in the middle. Daleks have an incredible voice, and the Dalek Emperor had a suitably new one, deep but still distorted voice to match its presence.
I am the god of all Daleks!
It would be easy to just put the Daleks in the number one spot, but that's almost like cheating. They've been great so many times before and after. Still, this two-part season finale is one of the best ones in New Who and one of the rare ones where their involvement was actually a surprise. As usually all the Dalek episodes are named Dalek something. Bad Wolf got to actually end on a cliffhanger with surprise Daleks, and that has to count for something. The first episode of New Who introduced us to a new Doctor and companion, but it also had to have an alien threat. And that threat was the nesting consciousness and its autons. The classic but not so well-known villain was used very well in this first episode, considering it couldn't focus too much on them as it had to set up everything else. Nevertheless, they played an important part in introducing Doctor Who to new generations of viewers. The nesting consciousness itself is just a big CGI blob, which you have probably figured out by now I'm not a huge fan of. But the real fun here is the autons. Playing on the thought that every child has had at some point in their lives, but if the mannequins at the store would be alive. They are wonderfully silly, but still menacing enough to be a real threat to the Doctor. Also, the scene where a trash bin eats Rose's boyfriend Mickey and then he gets replaced by a plastic version is probably the funniest scene in the whole show, as well as just a good litmus test to see if new viewers can get on board all the silliness Doctor Who can have. The Slitheen seem to be a divisive bunch. A quick look at IMDb shows that all the Slitheen episodes are the lowest rated ones in the entire season, so I guess they're not very popular, which I don't really get. The two-parter that introduced the Slitheen is great fun. Their plan of infiltrating the government under the guise of a fake alien crash landing to London is fantastic. The costumes are amazingly huge, and the effect when they're taking off the skin suits is just great. Also, they have a great name for their home planet.
Raxacoricofallapatorius.
That's obviously bonus points. Their third appearance in the episode Boomtown is one of my favorite episodes of the season, as Doctor has captured the only remaining member of the Slitheen family, Blonfell Fots-Pasamir Day Slitheen, and they just have a long and interesting moral discussion on what the Doctor does. Though they can be killed by vinegar, so how menacing can they actually be? Lady Cassandra. Not quite human, not quite alien either. She's the last pure human, and we meet her in the year 5.5-Apple-26, or more easily said, 5 billion years in the future, on the day the Earth is going to explode. Lady Cassandra has been alive for a very long time and is now just a flat piece of skin with eyes and a mouth that needs to be moisturized constantly.
Moisturize me, moisturize me.
Lady Cassandra has a wonderfully annoying upper-class voice and demeanor, and she thinks very highly of herself. She also has impeccable taste in music, bringing an iPod to the viewing platform, housing music from the greatest composers of Earth's history, and plays a traditional ballad. Lady Cassandra's actual plan of holding everyone hostage so that she can pay for more beauty operations is a bit tame, and she is just a CGI creature. Still, she is absolutely iconic and a wonderfully silly villain. One of the best. Now we're gonna get to the real controversial section of this list, as in number 3 we have The Empty Child. This would probably be a lot of people's favorite, but I would argue that they're not that great as villains. I mean, the two-parter is an incredible Doctor Who story, but it has a lot going for it, like getting to introduce Captain Jack Harkness to the show. But the Empty Child itself isn't really that villainous. It's just alien nanogenes trying to help, but they have misunderstood human biology. But okay, I do still have them in number 3, because they're great. The design is proper scary, and the ominous repeated phrase,
"Are you my mommy? Mommy."
is spooky, not to even mention the scariest scene in the whole show when the face of a doctor morphs into a gas mask. Ugh. I know I had the Daleks in here before, but this Dalek is separate. Called Metaltron, this Dalek works alone and is alone. It's the reintroduction of Daleks, and what an introduction it is. The Doctor shows just how dark he can get when he's up against Metaltron.
The Daleks have failed! Why don't you finish the job and make the Daleks extinct? Rid the universe of your filth! Why don't you just die?
As cool as it is when there's a whole army of Daleks, I think the Daleks are at their most menacing when there's just one. Metaltron feels like an absolutely unstoppable killing machine, and the reveal that Daleks can now fly is incredible. This episode is also rare in that it actually makes you sympathize with the Dalek as it learns to feel emotional pain being the last of its kind. The only problem with Metaltron and this episode is that Daleks have never been able to reach these heights again. So you might be wondering who's left there to be in the number one spot then? Drumroll please. Auton Mickey. Yes, Auton Mickey. I know, I mentioned him already before in the list together with the Autons, but him in the car with Rose is the funniest scene in the entire show.
Pizza.
Pizza. Pizza.
Or Chinese.
Pizza.
And then follow that up by the scene in the restaurant. It's a masterpiece showing just how silly Doctor Who can truly be.
But you can trust me, sweetheart, babe.
Darling.
Sugar. Babe, sugar.
And this list is final. No rebuttals. You cannot change my mind. I don't care how much you like the Daleks or the Empty Child or anybody else, Auton Mickey is the best villain in the whole season, maybe in the entire show. Auton Mickey beats them all. Well, not in a fight though. He's pretty hopeless, especially if you cut up its head. And join me next time as I rank all 708 of Lady Cassandra's cosmetic surgeries.